Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. Hi, I'm Michael, a practicing attorney with a demanding but structured schedule. My work responsibilities are quite predictable during office hours. I have specific times for client meetings, court appearances, and partner meetings on Tuesdays, which usually last until 6 p.m. As a result, I always manage to get home by 7 o'clock in the evening. My beloved wife Jessica, who is 31 years old, always looks exhausted on Tuesday evenings due to her volunteer work at the local community center. Consequently, I often take it upon myself to cook dinner while she refreshes herself in the shower and handles other household chores such as organizing our home office. However, our routine was disrupted when the senior partner unexpectedly canceled the weekly meeting due to an urgent client emergency. Having regained my free time, I quickly returned to my office to finish reviewing case files and realized that it was only 3:30. Taking advantage of the opportunity, I impulsively decided to go home earlier than scheduled to prepare dinner and handle the remaining tasks around the house before Jessica returned from her activities. Lately, she has been gradually distancing herself from me, and I hoped that a romantic candlelit dinner in a relaxed atmosphere, free from pressing household issues, would be able to revive the closeness and passion that we once shared. Our marriage has often been tested by external pressures, usually related to financial stress from my practice's demanding cases. It became obvious to me that she had become more detached, showing an increasing desire to control all aspects of our lives. This led to her becoming stubborn and entering into conflicts when something did not go according to her expectations. Despite all these difficulties, I remained patient. I got home earlier than usual that day. I parked the car in our detached garage, strategically located at the back of our property. This arrangement was made in the early years of our marriage to ensure we had a peaceful environment, as the noise of the car would not disturb our quiet home life. Something invaluable not only for our peace of mind but also for our sanity. It gave us much-needed quiet time to unwind after long workdays. As I was walking slowly towards our two-story colonial house, I noticed Jessica's car parked outside. This was a common occurrence during her volunteer days, as she preferred to leave her car accessible for quick errands. Concentrating on putting things in order, I quietly entered the house through the back door. As someone who prides himself on maintaining our home's condition, a skill that served me well in understanding property law, all the door hinges and moving parts in our house were in excellent condition, working smoothly and without annoying sounds. The sounds of slamming doors or creaking hinges were what really bothered us both. But when I entered the kitchen, my attention was immediately drawn to Jessica's purse, which was still on the counter. I knew she would be very upset about this, as Jessica always tried to keep her purse secure wherever she was. This unexpected sight diverted my attention from the usual organizing and forced me to be more attentive to the surrounding details. On the floor near the kitchen counter lay casual clothes, a cardigan and a lightweight scarf, along with her volunteer center tote bag. At that moment, faint sounds came from our bedroom upstairs. Perhaps Jessica had suddenly felt unwell and was now resting upstairs, I naively assumed. I carefully climbed the carpeted stairs, each step soft and thoughtful. Suddenly, I almost tripped over men's shoes blocking the way. These were not my own shoes, and they didn't match the business casual attire I was familiar with. When I climbed the remaining stairs, a chaotic picture appeared before my eyes. Scattered clothing lay mixed with Jessica's more elegant attire, the kind that was intended for special occasions such as anniversaries. I did not expect such a sight. Being in complete silence, conflicting emotions overwhelmed me as my rational mind came into conflict with the reality of my marriage experience, which had always been built on trust and unshakable faith in the loyalty, love, and devotion of my wife. I froze in place. My body was covered with perspiration. My blood pressure dropped sharply, and my heart seemed to stop beating for a moment. I had to sit down on the stairs to collect my thoughts. Some distrust quickly turned into an unusual surge of anger. I'm usually characterized by a calm, analytical temperament, especially as an attorney working with difficult clients and complex cases. But at that moment, that composure left me. Suddenly, adrenaline surged through my veins, and I experienced a feeling of rage that I had never encountered before. It was as if I had never been in a real confrontation before, and these emotions were completely alien to me. Nevertheless, despite the influx of these incomprehensible sensations, I tried to keep my composure. With an anxious desire to learn more, I carefully climbed the remaining stairs. Each step was quiet and cautious. The destination of my unwanted curiosity turned out to be our master bedroom suite, which connected to both the bedroom and the ensuite bathroom. Passing through the bathroom area, I found myself at the threshold of our spacious bedroom. Looking through the partially open door, positioned at an ideal distance, my gaze stopped at our bed. It was as if I'd become an involuntary witness to a scene I never wanted to see, unable to take my eyes off it. When I listened carefully, the air was filled with sounds that confirmed my worst fears. Overwhelmed by the tension of the moment, I instinctively reached for my phone to document the shocking scene. It was very important to capture this evidence. My legal training kicked in, understanding that documentation would be crucial for what lay ahead. Armed with this evidence, I would need to confront Jessica about the heartbreaking betrayal unfolding right before my eyes. My gaze was riveted to the sight. I could not tear myself away from seeing my wife, my partner, the companion of my whole life, a person I trusted unconditionally, betraying me in the most fundamental way. Overcome by a sense of betrayal, I abruptly stopped recording and quietly descended the stairs. After leaving our house, I went walking, not knowing where to go. In the end, I found myself in a distant park a few miles from our neighborhood. There I sat down on a bench and began to review the recording, keeping the volume low so as not to disturb other park visitors. The destruction of my usual life and everything that I had managed to accept as normal unfolded before my eyes like a digital reality on a phone screen. The destruction of our marriage shattered me. At that moment, tears were streaming down my face, and I felt adrift, tied only by a fragile thread preventing me from disappearing entirely. Fast forward to about 7 o'clock in the evening, the usual time of my return from the office. I was at the back door of our house again, and Jessica immediately sensed that something was wrong. My disheveled appearance, bloodshot eyes, and pale complexion were indisputable signs of distress. Worried, she asked softly, "Darling, what's wrong? You look so pale. Is everything okay?" Offering to bring me a drink, she asked, "Are you all right?" There was genuine concern in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to reveal the true cause of my disorder. With a trembling voice, I simply replied, "No, it's okay. Maybe I had something that disagreed with me, and my stomach hurts. I just need to take a shower and go to bed." Jessica replied in a sympathetic tone, "Okay, honey, but be sure to keep a container nearby in case you get sick. We don't want any mess on the freshly laundered sheets." She didn't know yet that I knew those sheets were no longer perfectly clean. They were stained with something much worse than any physical illness. They showed traces of betrayal. I gathered my courage and answered, "Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm going to sleep in the guest room until I recover," I said, heading to the bedroom on the ground floor. Over the next few days, Jessica remained the same as before, and I went about my business on autopilot, hiding in the guest room so that I could see her as little as possible. But I understood that I couldn't use this excuse indefinitely. Reluctantly, I returned to our bedroom, but a nagging sense of betrayal haunted me in this space of infidelity. Despite my discomfort, Jessica didn't seem to notice my distress and continued to behave as usual. Monday was approaching, and I finally made a firm decision on what to do. I wanted to find out if this was a common occurrence or just a one-time thing. Therefore, I informed my law partners about an unforeseen legal consultation that I had to handle the next day. They immediately arranged for a colleague to cover my court appearance on Tuesday morning. As usual, I parked my car a few streets away from our neighborhood, then quietly returned to our street, trying not to catch the attention of neighbors. Knowing the back entrances to properties adjacent to our house, I headed to our garage located at the rear of the lot. There I changed into comfortable clothes and put on soft-soled shoes so that my steps would be quiet. The waiting game had begun. Unexpectedly, unlike last Tuesday, I noticed that there was not a single additional car parked in our driveway. Therefore, I could not count on the sound of a car approaching to notify me of any visitor's arrival. I had to rely on my own observation skills. Cautiously, moving carefully, I made my way through our backyard, utilizing the hedges and shrubs that we had thoughtfully planted for privacy from the street. Finally, I found a position where our front entrance was clearly visible, but at the same time I was concealed by foliage. Standing patiently in place, I could hear Jessica going about her daily routine, completely unaware of my presence. It was obvious that she was completely confident in the usual sequence of events. The dishwasher was running in the kitchen, the living room was being cleaned and vacuumed. This routine lasted until about 11:30. Then Jessica went upstairs. I could hear the sounds of the shower, then silence, and then normal household sounds. After about 45 minutes, she came down the stairs and left the front door slightly ajar. I didn't have to wait long. Around 12:30 he appeared. I didn't know who he was, but he entered confidently through our front gate. My phone captured a 10-second video recording, documenting his profile and even an almost direct view of his face. Without hesitation, he quickly walked inside through the door. The next words that reached my ears sent shivers down my spine. "Hi, beautiful. I hope you're ready for another great afternoon," he said. Jessica's response sounded natural. "Of course. You know, I always prepare something special for these occasions." Perhaps it was these exchanges that strengthened my suspicions. This was not a fleeting encounter but a constant affair. The casual nature of their interactions suggested a well-rehearsed routine. Having observed enough, I dared not continue watching from my position, since remaining near the house risked discovery. They had just entered, and I, trying to regain my composure, headed back to the garage. My heart was pounding uncontrollably, demanding a moment of calm, but curiosity forced me to delve deeper into this mystery. Who was he? Where did they meet? How should I tell Jessica that I know about her infidelity? What exactly is she thinking? All this information hit me like a whirlwind, completely turning my world upside down. It dawned on me that I would never be able to love my wife Jessica the way I used to. The betrayal was too deep. I understood that some people believe that with proper counseling and a certain degree of dedication on both sides, such situations can be overcome, but it was quite obvious that Jessica's commitment level was alarmingly low. From now on, I would never be able to fully trust our relationship with her. The foundation of our marriage had been shattered, and she had destroyed the basic trust that our relationship was built upon. I couldn't help but wonder when and where it all started. I knew that Jessica had been involved with the downtown business district for at least 2 years. The area she frequented was only a few blocks from our house and was popular with several professional women in our social circle. I thought it was a great opportunity because it allowed Jessica to network with other women and create a sense of community. These women became very close to her, so much so that they even persuaded her to participate in various charity events held in the neighborhood. Maybe I should become more involved in the local business community too. I could join Jessica at some of these networking events and maybe meet new people in the area. It seemed to me that this would be a great opportunity to establish contact with other professionals and contribute to community life by participating in charitable events. In addition, the convenience of these activities being located just a few blocks from our house made it even more attractive. I would be able to improve my professional network and at the same time establish relationships with like-minded people. This was definitely worth considering as a starting point on my path to better community involvement. The group consisted of various professional women, and during their gatherings, they mostly dominated the conversations. It seemed like a weak excuse to exclude me from the group, since they expressed concerns about who would handle my work responsibilities while I attended social events. But I persisted, and the following Thursday, I managed to join them at a local networking event. When I entered the venue, it seemed to me that I had entered a place where everyone knew each other intimately. All eyes were fixed on me, and I could not help noticing the murmurs exchanged by the women. Jessica assured me that they just weren't used to seeing her accompanied during regular social gatherings. The event began with the usual networking and social exercises. Then, for an hour and a half, we mingled at various stations, ensuring that each professional connection was properly established. I continued to participate as long as possible, but after about 45 minutes, I felt that I needed to pause and get some refreshment. Realizing this, I took a break to get some coffee, and Jessica was understanding of my need. Sitting down at a nearby table, I began to observe Jessica more closely, and it became noticeable that she was visibly worried. Her gaze kept darting towards a specific area where some of the event organizers were gathered. Gradually, I began to pay closer attention to the venue around me. It was like any other professional networking space that can be found in business districts. Information boards were scattered around, and at each station, there were displays allowing you to assess various business services and professional offerings. With curiosity, I walked around the venue until my gaze stopped at an information board about local business leaders located near the exit. I approached it partly to distract myself and pass the time until the end of the event with Jessica. The photo at the top caught my attention. After reading the description, I saw a man whose age was difficult to determine but who undoubtedly had a confident, professional appearance. His name was Ryan Mitchell, described as a successful local business owner and community leader. Next to his name was contact information and business hours. Under his photo, I noticed 3 more people, 2 women and 1 additional man. At that moment, I stopped. The man in the photo turned out to be the same person I had seen entering my house. This was the same man who, with the apparent consent of my wife, had entered into an affair. Curiosity got the better of me, and I continued reading his description. Mr. Ryan Mitchell, a respected leader in the hospitality industry and owner of Mitchell's Tavern, a popular local establishment. Mentally noting his information, I accidentally looked at Jessica and realized that she was no longer at the station where I had last seen her. Intrigued, I repeated my journey and carefully examined all the areas in search of my wife. After a while, I noticed her engaged in what seemed to me a tense conversation with a man who was partially hidden by a display booth. Apparently, the man was standing at the entrance to a restricted area, and he was obviously not supposed to be in that section. She gave him a signal to leave and hurried back to the station where I was waiting. Not knowing about my observation of the conversation that took place, she did not guess about my growing concern. This feeling was unfamiliar to me, and when Jessica eventually returned to where I was sitting, she immediately noticed my anxious state. "Are you okay? What is it?" she asked with apparent concern. "Do you need some time to get more refreshment?" I replied, "Yes, but everything is fine now. Are you ready to go?" When she was about to answer my question, an announcement came over the venue's sound system. I noticed Jessica's subtle reaction. The usual final networking session for today was canceled due to the fact that one of the key speakers had suddenly become unavailable and had to leave. A chorus of disappointed murmurs swept through the venue, clearly indicating that most of the women present were looking forward to his presentation. Intrigued, I thought about the significance of this fact and decided that it required further investigation. Feeling Jessica's relief, I said, "Let's go." In a hurry, she quickly gathered her materials and purse from the designated area where everyone keeps their belongings during the event. As we were leaving, an unknown woman approached Jessica, catching her by surprise. "What a pity that Ryan couldn't finish his presentation today as usual," the woman commented. Jessica nodded in agreement and walked briskly to the car, clearly indicating that she did not want to discuss this topic anymore. "Okay, see you later," Jessica said dismissively and moved toward the car with remarkable speed. The drive back was surprisingly calm. Jessica seemed relaxed. She lay with her head thrown back, her eyes closed, and deliberately took deep breaths. I couldn't help but pay attention to these subtle details. Perhaps now that she was clearly relieved, I could ask her more and find out additional information. "It was a very interesting event, my dear," I remarked. "Apparently, everything in that venue is very well organized. No wonder you enjoy going there." Jessica gratefully replied, "You're absolutely right. They have an impressive program. I really like attending there. The women there are also very professional. But I am very sorry for the speaker, Mr. Mitchell." "You mean Ryan?" she answered hurriedly. "More precisely, Ryan Mitchell," I added. "He usually ends each event with a comprehensive presentation that really challenges everyone's thinking, ensuring that everyone leaves with the feeling that they have gained valuable insights. Unfortunately, he wasn't there today." I was alarmed when I realized that she was completely invested in this deception. I was well aware of how much she valued these networking opportunities, but all I could say was an indecisive, "Well, yes, perhaps by next Thursday he will be feeling better again." I couldn't help but think about the upcoming meeting between my wife and Mr. Mitchell, scheduled for next Thursday. It was time to focus and prepare for the following week. I found myself reflecting on my legal training and the meticulous approach required for building a case. Just as I would prepare for a complex litigation, I needed to gather evidence, understand the full scope of the situation, and develop a comprehensive strategy. The skills that served me well in the courtroom, attention to detail, patience, and strategic thinking, would now serve me in uncovering the truth about my marriage. But unlike my professional cases, this investigation would determine the fate of my personal life and everything I had believed to be true about the woman I married. It was time to approach this situation with the same methodical precision I brought to my most important cases, because the outcome would reshape everything about my future. I found myself thinking about how to investigate this further when fate provided an unexpected opportunity. During my usual pickup duties at the local elementary school, a volunteer responsibility I'd taken on to stay connected with our community, I encountered a familiar face. To my surprise, as the afternoon pickup time neared its end, a car pulled up, and behind the wheel was the same woman who had tried to talk to Jessica during the networking event the day before. "Hello," she greeted me. "I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with this whole process, and I completely forgot about the time. My son Timothy, according to the teachers, should be here somewhere. We often encounter such situations, especially when someone is new to the school routine. I promised to help locate him while my fellow volunteer handled the remaining children." As I approached Timothy's classroom, I noticed that he was talking to another student. "Hi, Tim," I greeted him. "Your mom has already arrived to pick you up, so let's go to the pickup area together." He looked slightly taken aback by my statement. Considering that he was in the 5th grade, he didn't seem to be a person who would forget about pickup arrangements or be distracted in such matters. "Strange," he remarked. "Usually on Friday afternoons, my mom has business meetings with a professional consultant. As a rule, she doesn't have time to pick me up. When I was at my previous school, it sometimes happened that she came even at 5:30. The mention of a professional consultant immediately caused me alarm. Despite this, I tried to keep my composure and engage in casual conversation. "It's nice to hear that your mom takes care of her professional development. Business consulting is really very important for maintaining a successful career. By the way, do you happen to know who this consultant is?" I silently hoped that the answer would not confirm my suspicions. "His name is Ryan or something similar," Timothy replied. "In addition, he works at a local business establishment, offering private consultations for people without them having to travel far. As a kid, I think it's pretty cool. My mom finds great satisfaction in his guidance during their Friday meetings. Every Friday evening when we get home, she looks incredibly calm and satisfied. It's a wonderful sight. Since Mom is usually busy on Fridays, we usually get takeout food." The boy added, I couldn't help but think that this man Ryan must be providing his services not only to my wife. I walked Timothy to the car, and his mother thanked me loudly for my assistance. "No problem," I reassured her. "It's all part of community service. By the way, I don't think we've properly met before. My name is Michael Davis. Glad to meet you." I held out my hand, and she introduced herself as Jennifer Wilson. She mentioned that she had seen me at the networking event last Thursday when I came with my wife Jessica. She apologized for Jessica's hasty departure, explaining that Mr. Mitchell's absence had disrupted the usual routine that evening. At that moment, her whole behavior changed dramatically. Before, she had looked like a busy parent who was late to pick up a child from school, but in an instant, her face turned pale and she became alert. She flinched slightly, her anxiety becoming obvious. With doubt in her voice, she said, "Yes, okay. See you later, Mr. Davis. Goodbye." And she left quickly. It was time to forge my own path toward a future that I once believed was planned with my wife Jessica. But now that future seemed uncertain to me. It painted a potentially lonely existence without Jessica and perhaps without the life I had envisioned. Having experienced this betrayal, I went on an unexpected journey, drawing upon my legal training to methodically plan my next steps. Along the way, I began to carefully study those financial and legal aspects that often go unnoticed in the daily life of married couples. Who is responsible for paying which bills? Which insurance policies do we rely on? When do I need to pay for utilities? Which accounts should be used for specific payments and at what time? These questions demanded my attention while I diligently gathered information. To my surprise, I discovered that our mortgage debt was just a modest amount waiting to be repaid. I was amazed when I discovered that an impressive amount of money had accumulated in my retirement accounts, $900,000. I'm sincerely grateful to the State Bar Association for advocating for mandatory contributions to retirement funds as one of the main benefits of legal practice. After a detailed study of divorce law, ironically, an area I had never specialized in professionally, I realized that there was no way I could avoid the fact that our assets would have to be divided equally. Since our children are already independent adults, we have a significant amount in our joint vacation account, about $30,000 intended for our upcoming European trip. The dream trip I was planning was clearly out of the question now. Deciding to act quickly before Jessica suspected that I knew about her betrayal, I set myself the task of legally and strategically protecting my interests. Acting with careful planning, I began making various necessary repairs around the house. I deliberately identified maintenance issues that needed attention, ensuring that these problems occurred when Jessica was not at home. When she asked about repairs, I explained the situations and mentioned the costs involved for professional services. I carefully documented these expenses, using this approach to gradually set aside funds in a separate account. In addition, I made purchases of legal reference materials and office equipment for cash, which I showed to Jessica, and then returned many items the next day for refunds, keeping the cash separately. I'm aware that this behavior involves deception, but Jessica's actions had already undermined the principles of honesty and trust in our relationship. This whole situation was turning me into something I never imagined becoming, someone who had to strategically protect himself within his own marriage. Meanwhile, Jessica continued her meetings on Thursdays with Ryan. I stopped making any effort to maintain a romantic relationship with Jessica. Instead, we just coexisted as roommates. Gradually, my personal belongings began to disappear, finding their new home in boxes stored in our garage. Jessica rarely looked there, so the rearrangement went unnoticed. When she asked why some of my personal items were no longer visible, I mentioned that I was decluttering and simplifying our living space. Apparently, she was pleased with this response, primarily because most of my belongings didn't match Jessica's preferred aesthetic or desired atmosphere in our home. When most of my things were cleared away in this manner, it didn't significantly impact the overall atmosphere in the house. It made me realize to what extent I had accommodated Jessica's preferences in our shared life. I decided to carefully withdraw available funds from my retirement accounts and made a down payment on a small house on the outskirts of town. It had only 2 bedrooms and a small yard, along with a garage, and was conveniently close to the courthouse where I frequently worked. Even more pleasantly, the mortgage payment could be comfortably managed with just a portion of my salary. It wasn't a luxury mansion, but it's incredible how affordable and practical real estate can be when you don't chase prestigious neighborhoods. While the separation process was ongoing, I gradually moved my personal belongings to the new house. It wasn't difficult to furnish the house, as I easily found quality used items at estate sales and consignment shops. That's how I felt about my life, like a collection of previously valued things, once treasured by me but now deemed unnecessary by the person I had shared them with. I had to take what I deserved. It was time for accountability, and it was at this moment that I encountered Jennifer Wilson again. But this time, she took the initiative and approached me. The memory of this moment will forever remain clear in my mind. Once again, this happened during the usual school pickup routine. As the supervising volunteer, I found myself alone with Timothy and was anticipating her arrival. When she finally appeared, it was impossible not to notice her agitated expression and signs of recent distress. Attorneys often pay attention to these subtle signals because they can provide valuable information about people's situations and suggest ways to help. "Mr. Davis, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked hesitantly. "Of course. There's no one else here, so please feel comfortable. You can have a seat, and we can talk privately," I replied, gesturing to the benches placed around the school area. She parked nearby, and Timothy occupied himself with a soccer ball. We settled down on a bench located next to the pickup area. "I don't know how to start," she hesitated, preparing to share something important with me. "I don't know how familiar you are with the business community where you saw me," she said, meeting my gaze. "But my husband and I are regular participants, and networking plays an important role in our professional lives." I answered cautiously, feeling that this was not all she wanted to share. "My wife Jessica is a regular attendee, and it plays an important role in keeping her professionally active." She seemed to be on the verge of tears and spoke with difficulty. "Is she involved with Ryan Mitchell?" she asked, trying to get to the point. "You have no idea how much this disgusting man has destroyed," she declared, her voice full of anger. "I think I have some information I really want to share with you," I encouraged her with renewed attention. "He's a predator," she said emotionally, holding back tears. "The only purpose of his presence in our community is his desire to manipulate as many women as possible who participate in these networking events." I was curious and asked, "How did you find out?" With tears in her eyes, she stammered, "Because I was one of them." Emotionally overwhelmed, she explained through her tears. "I'm telling you about this only because I finally realized who he really is and, more importantly, what he represents." Taking a deep breath, she continued, "A week ago, we had regular business meetings. He would come to my home office every Friday around 12:30. Don't misunderstand. He was truly skilled, a master of professional manipulation. He had the ability to make you feel like the most important client in the world." Lost in her thoughts, she looked distantly as if reliving the professional relationship they had shared. My attention focused on her words, but with growing concern about what this meant for my own situation. "I'm sorry," she continued regretfully. "I valued our professional relationship, but it ended abruptly when he replaced me without explanation. It's like I was just dismissed. I had hopes for continued business collaboration, but alas, this was not to be. Having experienced a difficult divorce myself, I understand the value of professional relationships and trusted partnerships. I was hoping to maintain this business connection, but my expectations were shattered when he surprised me with his unprofessional behavior. I was completely stunned. How could this woman consider it acceptable to share all this information with me? Obviously, she was very angry. I hurried to respond, realizing that business relationships don't always work out as we hope. Looking into my eyes, she realized that I was experiencing my own difficulties. "You already know, don't you?" she asked slowly, shaking her head in disbelief. "You know that he's involved with Jessica, your wife?" "Yes. I already know everything, Jennifer. I'm grateful to you for sharing this. Although I must admit I'm still processing my own anger. But I already have a plan to address this situation. I really believe in accountability, and I have a feeling that it will soon come to pass." "This man deserves consequences," I responded. Jennifer almost exclaimed. "He doesn't care about the feelings and well-being of other people, using them solely for his own benefit. He brags about his conquests to his friends at his tavern. If you need my help in seeking justice, please feel free to let me know. This scoundrel will have to face accountability, and it won't be easy," she said resolutely. Repeating her commitment, she called out to her son, making it clear that they were leaving. I remained sitting, lost in thought and considering the situation. Jennifer's revelation brought me a sense of clarity, as I realized that my desire for justice was not just about my personal situation, but about protecting other potential victims from this predatory behavior. I wondered how many other women from our community he was involved with. It was time to collect concrete evidence. I couldn't help but note his apparent stamina and brazenness. It seemed this man never tired of his manipulative games. After finding out that he maintained his business operations every day except Mondays when his tavern was closed, I remembered the contact information I had seen on the community board. Using online business directories, I tracked his information to an address located just 3 blocks from our house. It became clear why this man could easily walk to our house and engage in his illicit relationship with my soon-to-be ex-wife. I informed Jessica of my intention to take evening walks around 5 p.m., citing my doctor's recommendation for better health. Fortunately, this was a plausible excuse, and Jessica had no desire to accompany me, knowing that it would not interfere with her secret meetings. During my first evening walk, I immediately went to Ryan's address and noted that he lived in a ground-floor apartment in a small complex. Noticing his absence, I positioned myself nearby and waited for his arrival. As I suspected, he had to return around 6 p.m. since he consistently left our house well before that time. As expected, he entered his apartment a few minutes before 6 p.m., and this happened every day when I could observe, with the exception of days when I had unavoidable work commitments. I suspected that he maintained this schedule consistently. Curiosity was driving me, and I reflected that every day he likely had another woman with whom he conducted his business meetings. Deciding to get to the truth, I began to investigate whether he had other victims. My daily walks gradually became more strategic, solely to observe his activities and patterns. In the end, I decided to take a week of vacation time and devoted it entirely to this investigation. Armed with the necessary tools, I quietly purchased surveillance equipment from an electronics store, nothing too sophisticated, just basic recording devices. I purchased several small, high-definition cameras with motion activation. In addition, I acquired a portable storage device to preserve all the digital evidence. Having purchased everything I needed, on Monday I began the process of gathering evidence. I waited patiently until Ryan left for his tavern, giving me the opportunity to observe his apartment building more closely. The building had minimal security, and I was able to position recording equipment in public areas where it would capture comings and goings without violating any privacy laws. My legal training helped me ensure that all evidence gathering remained within legal boundaries. From that moment on, every movement in the common areas was carefully documented. The footage, with date and timestamps, was carefully preserved for later use. On Tuesday evening, excellent recordings were captured of Ryan returning home and later receiving a visitor, a woman I didn't recognize. Taking advantage of the fact that his tavern was closed on Mondays, I patiently waited and observed the patterns of his activities. On Wednesday, I discreetly installed additional recording equipment in strategic locations around our own property, ensuring that any evidence gathered would be legally admissible. After reviewing the recordings made on Tuesday, I was shocked by what I observed. Although I could not hear conversations clearly, Ryan's routine became obvious. He maintained a consistent schedule, and different women visited him on different days of the week. On Thursday, I positioned myself in our garage with monitoring equipment and waited patiently for events to unfold. Almost immediately, recordings from my surveillance system appeared on the screen. When Ryan woke up that morning, he followed his usual routine and then made phone calls. One call was particularly revealing. I could hear him scheduling meetings with someone named Julie, discussing timing and arrangements in a way that confirmed this was far from a legitimate business relationship. By this time, I had essentially moved out of our house emotionally. I could barely bring myself to call it home because it had lost all sentimental meaning. Now it was just a building where I happened to still legally reside. Jessica once mentioned that the house seemed unusually empty lately. I casually explained that I was actively decluttering. She accepted my answer without much interest, pleased to have additional space for her own belongings. In addition to removing my personal items, I had already sought the advice of a divorce attorney, ironically, referring this case to a colleague since I couldn't represent myself. All the necessary legal documents were carefully prepared and ready for filing at the appropriate time. The financial arrangements were strategically handled, and I successfully transferred vacation funds to a separate personal account. To be fully prepared, I diligently kept all receipts and documentation in organized files so that they could be easily accessed if necessary. I made significant changes to my financial arrangements. First, I updated the beneficiaries of my retirement accounts, specifying our adult children as recipients. I also took steps to separate my personal finances, such as establishing individual accounts, credit cards, and insurance policies. To ensure complete financial separation, I transferred Jessica's car, including registration and insurance, exclusively to her name, placing all responsibility on her. Unfortunately, I had no unilateral authority over our house, so I had to rely on the court's decisions regarding its fate. In addition, I obtained a new mobile phone registered only in my name and ensured that its number was not shared with Jessica to maintain confidentiality. I disposed of the old phone that had been part of our shared plan. Jennifer proved invaluable in helping me understand the scope of Ryan's predatory behavior. She compiled a list of women with whom Ryan had been involved or had inappropriate relationships. She approached this task with determination, collecting names and contact information within just a week. To my dismay but not surprise, Jessica's name was included in this comprehensive list. I assembled packages of information for every husband or partner associated with the women mentioned by Jennifer. Each package contained evidence of where Ryan had conducted inappropriate relationships with their spouses or partners. I also provided Ryan's personal details, such as his name and address, to address the issue of his pattern of behavior. Additionally, I included information about local counseling services and legal resources in each package. In addition, I took the initiative and sent a detailed letter to the local business association and the property management company that leased space to Mitchell's Tavern, advising them to investigate the conduct of this establishment's owner. Finally, I prepared the divorce papers and several printed photographs taken from my surveillance equipment, which clearly documented Ryan and Jessica's affair. I left a package containing evidence of her infidelities, along with my wedding ring, which I had deliberately damaged to symbolize the destruction of our marriage. The note I included contained a clear message to Jessica. I am returning this broken ring, symbolizing the destruction you have brought to our marriage. If you want to communicate, please do so only through the attorney listed in our divorce papers. I have taken all necessary measures to ensure appropriate boundaries, so please refrain from attempting to contact me directly. Any harassment will result in immediate legal intervention. Our children have been informed of the situation in order to prevent misunderstandings about the reason for our separation. I took precautions and sent copies of relevant evidence to appropriate parties. After that, I moved to my new residence, anticipating the inevitable consequences. And indeed, they unfolded dramatically. Surprisingly, local news outlets reported a scandal involving Mitchell's Tavern, which led to investigations and the eventual closure of the establishment, with the owner leaving town. Another incident involved the former tavern owner being confronted by unknown individuals in the downtown area. Apparently, several of the affected husbands had taken matters into their own hands. The number of divorce filings in the local family court increased sharply, which caused a wave of houses to be listed for sale in our area. On one fateful day, Jessica returned home and was greeted with my documentation package, which caused her to collapse in shock. Terrified by her reaction, neighbors saw Jessica fall to the floor. An observant elderly neighbor, a strong woman of about 70, quickly understood the situation and, before leaving to give Jessica privacy, made sure to call emergency services, leaving the door ajar. Later, Jessica tried to contact me. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't reach me on any available phones. Desperate to meet with me, she decided to come to my law office but was prevented by building security after I had issued appropriate instructions. The firm warning from courthouse security significantly deterred her attempts at direct contact. Our adult children, expressing their disapproval, made it clear what they thought of someone who so shamefully betrays their spouse. Fortunately, both our children and I shared more principled views on loyalty and commitment than Jessica had demonstrated. In the end, the divorce was finalized, and the remaining financial issues were resolved through the legal system. As a result, Jessica was required to sell our house. After receiving her portion of the proceeds, she was able to rent an apartment on the outskirts of town, where she currently lives. She became reluctant to appear in public, as she was recognized everywhere and faced disapproving looks and whispered judgment. The overwhelming shame of this social rejection and humiliation eventually led her to seek psychiatric counseling. It also became apparent that Ryan had exposed many women, including Jessica, to health risks through his reckless behavior. She soon fell into a deep depression. Our children, like me, chose not to maintain communication with their mother after her betrayal, and I now live peacefully in my smaller house. I cannot forgive my cheating ex-wife, but I have found peace in knowing that justice was served and that other potential victims were protected from Ryan Mitchell's predatory behavior. Sometimes, the legal system works exactly as it should, protecting the innocent and holding the guilty accountable for their actions. Story 2. I often say that a quick way to heal from heartbreak is to start a new chapter as soon as possible. This theory was tested in practice when my closest friend discovered that his fiancée had an affair with another man during his bachelor party the night before their wedding. Accordingly, that evening I woke up expecting to fulfill my duty as best man at my friend's wedding the next day. But instead of celebrating with his new wife, my friend and the rest of the groomsmen spent the night at a bar, where he eventually left with an attractive brunette. The story began when my friend, whom I'll call Chris, brought me an invitation to his wedding. Chris and I were not only roommates in college but also close friends, so it was fitting that I would be by his side as his best man on his special day. Years after our college days, during our university years, Chris was in a relationship with a girl named Ashley. Ashley, who was a year younger than us, had a lively and charismatic personality, although she was prone to being quite demanding. Despite this, we all enjoyed her company very much because she brought humor and energy to our group. It's worth noting that she was also incredibly attractive. All our friends were interested in her, but our friend Chris stood out from the rest, so we thought they were the perfect couple. Meanwhile, Ashley led an active social life, participated in numerous campus events, and showed a passion for political activism and progressive causes. In addition, she had a close male friend whom we assumed to be gay because of his flamboyant mannerisms and interest in fashion and cosmetics. We didn't consider him a serious contender for Ashley's affection since he exclusively dated men. Accordingly, Chris never perceived him as a potential rival. Since Ashley's gay best friend is the most important element of this story, we'll call him Derek. So Ashley and Derek knew each other before Ashley began her romantic relationship with Chris. Derek, being the epitome of supportive friendship, sincerely approved of Ashley and Chris's relationship. One semester, I started sharing an apartment with Chris, and as a result, Ashley and Derek became frequent guests in our place. Their presence became so familiar that we had grown accustomed to their constant visits. From the moment Chris and Ashley became a couple, it became obvious that Chris was deeply in love. He began to prioritize spending time with Ashley over hanging out with us, including her in all aspects of his life. Even during our guys' night out events, Chris couldn't be separated from Ashley, and she often accompanied us. Derek also joined us sometimes, and we got used to his presence. When we graduated from college, it seemed inevitable to everyone that Ashley and Chris would end up together. There was no doubt about it. 2 years passed, and at the age of 25, I found a job I enjoyed and settled into my own apartment. Life was really good to me, and I led a genuine bachelor lifestyle. Having a decent appearance and good social skills, I managed to attract several interested women. The idea of settling down or starting a serious relationship didn't even cross my mind. I was the epitome of a single guy enjoying city life. Every evening I went out, enjoying the nightlife and social scene, and most often successfully brought companions home. It was a fulfilling existence, and I couldn't ask for more. Around the same time, I received a rather unexpected text message and then a phone call from Chris with an invitation to become his best man. Given our close friendship that had developed during our student years, there was no need for him to ask. I gladly accepted this honor. As the wedding approached, we arranged to have our formal wear fitted. To my surprise, I saw not only Chris and his fiancée Ashley there, but also Derek. It had been quite a while since I had seen Derek, and we took the opportunity to catch up. During our conversation, I learned that he had entered into a serious relationship with his partner. Derek was not only managing his career in the city but also found time to participate in the wedding. It's not surprising that he and Ashley remained the closest of friends, living in the same metropolitan area. During this period, I also had the pleasure of meeting Chris's younger sister, who seemed very intriguing to me. However, I made a conscious decision not to pursue anything beyond friendly relations out of respect for my friend. Despite this, the mutual interest between us was apparent, and we often engaged in light flirtation whenever the opportunity arose. When the bachelor party night arrived, I had arranged transportation to take us to an elegant venue we had rented for the celebration. We had the opportunity to enjoy a memorable evening with all of Chris's close friends and family members. The program for the evening included dinner at an upscale restaurant, followed by entertainment at a popular downtown establishment. It might seem somewhat extravagant to have multiple venues for one bachelor party, but Chris had his own vision, and he wanted everything to be exactly right for his last night of bachelorhood. Chris was looking forward to his wedding day and couldn't help but feel excited. The bachelor party was certainly well planned. Its total cost was around $5,000, with Chris contributing $2,000, while the rest of us groomsmen split the remaining expenses. Chris couldn't contain his excitement about the upcoming wedding, constantly mentioning how grateful he was that Ashley's parents were contributing significantly to cover the wedding expenses. Thanks to their generosity, Ashley was able to arrange a fabulous wedding that she had always dreamed of. Ashley, known for her perfectionism, spared no expense to ensure that every detail of the wedding would be flawless. Although Chris often kept track of expenses, he understood the importance of this special day for Ashley and spared no expense to make it truly unforgettable. He couldn't quite come to terms with the fact that the wedding, which would take place in just 24 hours, had a budget of $30,000. Both Chris and I thought that this amount was quite substantial. If he had the choice, he would have preferred a more modest celebration for $10,000 with fewer guests. But Ashley was determined, and this insistence would soon lead to unexpected consequences. She longed for many guests to witness what she considered the pinnacle of her life. The outdoor ceremony was supposed to be the epitome of a traditional, elegant wedding. They had rented a sprawling 2-acre estate that housed a grand 4,000-square-foot mansion where the bride, groom, and wedding party would prepare for the celebration and take photographs. The outdoor scenery was stunning, and no expense was spared in creating a picturesque setting. It was undeniably beautiful. Even I, who had doubts about the extravagant cost of the wedding, could not help but be charmed by its elegance. The bachelor party was in full swing. We had enjoyed an excellent dinner, and the mood was celebratory as we made our way to the second venue, an upscale entertainment complex downtown. The atmosphere was festive with music, drinks, and good company. As the evening progressed, the entertainment became more lively. We were in a private section of the venue, celebrating Chris's last night as a bachelor. The drinks were flowing, and everyone was in high spirits. It was around 11 p.m. when I decided to step outside for some fresh air and to make a phone call to confirm the morning transportation arrangements for the wedding. The venue had an outdoor area with a view of the city, and I needed a quiet spot to handle these logistics. As I was finishing my call, I noticed a familiar figure near the venue's side entrance. It was Derek, which struck me as odd since he wasn't part of the bachelor party. He seemed to be waiting for someone, checking his phone frequently and looking around nervously. Curious about his presence, I moved closer, staying in the shadows of the building. That's when I saw Ashley emerge from what appeared to be a rideshare vehicle. She was dressed casually, not in the bachelorette party attire I would have expected, and she looked around cautiously before approaching Derek. My heart began to race as I watched them embrace. Not in the friendly way I had seen them interact before, but intimately, passionately. This was clearly not a casual encounter between friends. I quickly pulled out my phone and began recording, my hands trembling slightly. I needed evidence of what I was witnessing because I knew Chris would need to see this for himself. They talked quietly for a few minutes, their body language suggesting an intimate relationship. Then, to my absolute shock, they entered the venue together through a side entrance that led to the hotel section of the complex. I stood there for several minutes, processing what I had just witnessed. My best friend's fiancé was clearly having an affair with Derek, the man we had all assumed was gay, the man Chris had never seen as a threat. The irony was devastating. Here we were, celebrating Chris's bachelor party, while his bride-to-be was betraying him just one floor above us with her supposed gay best friend. I had to make a decision. Continue the party and confront Chris later, or deal with this situation immediately. The wedding was less than 12 hours away. Guests would be arriving in the morning. Everything was already paid for and arranged. But I couldn't let my best friend marry someone who was cheating on him on the very night of his bachelor party. I returned to our private area, where the party was still going strong. Chris was laughing with his college buddies, completely oblivious to what was happening upstairs. I caught the attention of his brother Mark and motioned for him to follow me to a quieter corner. "We need to talk," I said seriously. "It's about Ashley." Mark immediately sobered up. "What's wrong? What happened?" I showed him the video on my phone. His face went through a range of emotions: confusion, shock, and finally anger. "Are you absolutely sure?" he asked. "I saw them with my own eyes. They're here in this building right now." Mark ran his hands through his hair. "We have to tell Chris." "I know, but how do we do this? The wedding is tomorrow morning. We can't let him go through with it," Mark said firmly. "He needs to know." Together we approached Chris. The music was loud, and everyone around us was still celebrating, unaware of the crisis unfolding. "Chris," I said, putting my hand on his shoulder, "we need to talk to you privately. It's important." He looked at us with a confused smile. "Come on, guys. It's my bachelor party. Whatever it is can wait until after the wedding." "No, Chris," Mark said seriously. "It really can't wait." The tone in our voices must have convinced him because he followed us to a quiet corner of the venue. I pulled out my phone and showed him the video. The look on Chris's face as he watched is etched in my memory forever. I watched my best friend's world crumble in real time. His hands shook as he held the phone, and all he could say was, "Oh my God. Oh my God." "Chris," I said gently, "they're here, in this building, right now." He looked up at us with devastation in his eyes. "How long do you think this has been going on?" "I don't know, man. But we need to figure out what you want to do." Chris stood up abruptly. "I need to see this for myself." Mark and I exchanged glances. "Chris, maybe that's not the best idea right now." "No," he said firmly. "I need to know the truth." We couldn't stop him. He was determined to confront the situation head-on. We made our way to the hotel section of the building, Chris leading the way with a determined but heartbroken expression. The hotel had several floors, and we weren't sure which room they might be in. Chris approached the front desk and, using his considerable charm and explaining that he was looking for his fiancée who he believed was staying in the hotel, managed to get information about Derek's room reservation. The elevator ride to the 5th floor was silent. Each of us lost in our own thoughts about what was about to happen and how it would change everything. When we reached Derek's room, Chris paused outside the door. We could hear voices inside, Ashley's laugh and Derek's voice. There was no doubt about what was happening. Chris raised his hand to knock, then stopped. He looked at us with tears in his eyes. "My wedding is in 8 hours. "I know, buddy," I said, "but you can't marry her after this." He nodded slowly, then knocked firmly on the door. The voices inside immediately stopped. After a long pause, Derek's voice called out, "Who is it?" "It's Chris," my friend said, his voice steady despite his emotional state. "I need to talk to Ashley." There was scrambling inside, hushed urgent whispers, and then Derek opened the door, wearing only a hotel bathrobe. His face was flushed, and his hair was disheveled. "Chris, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at your bachelor party? Where is Ashley?" Chris asked, pushing past Derek into the room. Ashley emerged from the bathroom, also in a hotel robe, her makeup smeared and her hair messed up. The guilt on her face was unmistakable. "Chris," she started, "this isn't what it looks like." "Really?" Chris said, his voice breaking. "Because it looks like my fiancé is cheating on me with my supposed gay friend on the night before our wedding." Ashley began to cry. "Chris, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How long has this been going on?" Derek stepped forward. "Chris, man, I'm sorry. This just happened. It wasn't planned. Just happened." Chris laughed bitterly. "You just happened to book a hotel room on the night of my bachelor party, and my fiancé just happened to show up?" Ashley was sobbing now. "Chris, I'm so sorry. I love you. This was a mistake." "A mistake?" Chris's voice was rising. "Getting married tomorrow would be a mistake. This is betrayal." The scene was heartbreaking. My best friend was facing the destruction of his relationship and the cancellation of his wedding just hours before the ceremony. "How long?" Chris asked again, his voice now quiet and cold. Ashley looked at Derek, then back at Chris. 6 months, she whispered. The room fell silent except for Ashley's crying. Chris turned to leave, then stopped. "The wedding is off. I'll deal with the cancellations and the guests. Don't contact me again." We followed Chris out of the hotel room and back down to the lobby. He was moving like a man in shock, mechanically but without really processing what was happening. "Chris," I said, "what do you need us to do?" He sat down heavily in one of the lobby chairs. "I need to call my parents, and Ashley's parents, and the wedding coordinator. God, this is going to be a nightmare." Mark sat down next to him. "We'll help you with everything. You don't have to handle this alone." Over the next few hours, we made the necessary phone calls. Chris's parents were shocked and supportive. Ashley's parents were devastated. They had invested emotionally and financially in this wedding. The wedding coordinator was surprisingly understanding, mentioning that unfortunately, she had dealt with last-minute cancellations before, though rarely under such dramatic circumstances. As dawn approached, instead of preparing for a wedding, we were dealing with the aftermath of betrayal. The venue couldn't refund the money. It was too late for that. The catering, flowers, music, and photography were all paid for and couldn't be canceled. Chris made one final decision that surprised all of us. "We're not going to waste everything," he said. "Let's turn the venue into a party. Invite everyone who was coming to the wedding, but instead of celebrating a marriage, we'll celebrate me dodging a bullet." And that's exactly what we did. At 2 p.m., when the wedding was supposed to begin, Chris stood before 150 guests and explained what had happened. Some people left, but most stayed to support him. The wedding reception became an impromptu celebration of freedom and friendship. The band played, the food was served, and Chris danced with his sister, his mother, and several single women who had been invited as guests. By the end of the evening, Chris had exchanged contact information with 3 different women and seemed to be handling the situation better than anyone could have expected. As for Ashley and Derek, they left town shortly after the confrontation. Word spread quickly through our social circle about what had happened. Ashley faced significant social consequences. Many of her friends felt betrayed by her deception, particularly regarding Derek's sexuality, which had been a lie designed to hide their relationship. Derek, who had been living a double life, found that his deception had cost him most of his friendships as well. The couple moved to another city, but according to mutual friends, their relationship didn't last long. The foundation of lies and betrayal that brought them together ultimately destroyed their relationship as well. It also came to light that Derek had been involved with several other women while maintaining his facade as a gay man, using this identity to gain their trust and access to their lives. Ashley wasn't his only victim, she was just the most recent one. 6 months later, Chris was in a serious relationship with a woman he had met at the canceled wedding reception. One of Ashley's former college friends who had been appalled by Ashley's behavior and had reached out to Chris afterward to offer her support. "You know," Chris told me a year later, "finding out the night before the wedding was actually the best thing that could have happened. Imagine if I had discovered this after we were married, maybe after we had kids. The bachelor party betrayal saved me from years of deception." Looking back, it's both tragic and fortunate how everything unfolded. The truth came out at the worst possible time, but also at the best possible time, before Chris legally bound himself to someone who was fundamentally dishonest. Sometimes the most painful discoveries are also the most liberating ones. Chris learned this lesson in the most dramatic way possible, but he emerged stronger, wiser, and ultimately happier than he would have been living a lie. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.